The Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi pushes for an elected leadership council and a ceasefire for Libya after meeting with Khalifa Haftar. Street protests against racism continues in the U.S. and other parts of the world. And the World Health Organization now recommends wearing of masks to combat the spread of COVID-19. Hello and welcome to Africa Live. As always, great to have you with us. I'm Richard Nta, live in Nairobi. And for those of you joining us from across the continent and around the globe, we thank you for joining us. Let's take a look at other stories making headlines this hour. An African establishment develops a homegrown teleconferencing solution. And in sports, FIFA almost done with relief plan set to help global football due to the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. Once again, welcome to Africa Live. Let's get started in Libya, where the Libyan commander Khalifa Haftar has agreed to a ceasefire that's part of a new peace initiative led by Egypt. The ceasefire was announced to take effect from Monday. The initiative is meant to end unrest heightened by the Libyan National Army's quest to take over the capital, Tripoli. The LNA is headed by Haftar, and Egypt has been one of its more prominent backers. The plan includes a call for negotiations in Geneva and for the exit of all foreign fighters from Libya. The announcement was made in Cairo, where both Haftar and his ally, the Eastern Libyan Parliament head, Aguila Saleh, were present. Haftar spoke against the intervention of Turkey in Libya, saying that it had caused internal, regional, and international polarization. The proposal comes after the collapse of a 14-month offensive by Haftar's forces. Libya's government of national accord said on Friday that its forces had retaken Terhuna. Terhuna was the last major stronghold of the LNA in the west. A day earlier, LNA forces also withdrew from Tripoli after a series of defeats.
The initiative aims to guarantee a fair representation of Libya's 3 provinces in a presidential council elected by the people, under the supervision of the United Nations, to manage Libya's leadership for the first time in the country's history, and to unite all Libyan institutions and organize them in a way that will enable them to play their role and guarantee fair and transparent distribution of Libyan resources for all citizens. The initiative will prevent extremist groups or militia from taking over the state's resources. It also entails a constitutional declaration that will regulate the upcoming period's political and electoral obligations.
The initiative falls in line with the Libyan constitution, and I hope that the transitional period in Libya does not last for long. The executive authority includes a president and 2 deputies, as well as a prime minister. This council's mandate should last for a year and a half and can be extended by additional 6 months. No one will be marginalized. This initiative will be approved by the United Nations as it depends on Berlin Conference results, so it is in full agreement with the Libyan constitution.
This development in Libya comes amid recent gains made by forces loyal to the government of national accord. The recapture of the city of Terhuna now means the GNA administration has full control of Greater Tripoli. CGTN's Chao Mgono reports.
It was part of celebrations after forces loyal to Libya's UN-backed government recaptured Terhuna from East Base Commander Khalifa Haftar. Terhuna was the main launchpad for Haftar's offensive on Tripoli and the government of national accord. Haftar forces claimed the withdrawal was a humanitarian gesture intended to spare the city from destruction. Hundreds of people have been killed and around 200,000 driven from their homes since Haftar launched his assault on the capital more than a year ago. Opinions on the street of Benghazi varied on the withdrawal. Turkey's backing is said to have helped the GNA gain ground against Haftar.
Any honest patriotic person knows that the army's withdrawal is because of the intense Turkish drone air attacks that hit the army, so they had to withdraw. But God willing, our army will win, thanks to the wise leaders.
As for us, the Libyan people, we want victory for the army, God willing. Whatever GNA do, whether they bring Turkey, America or Italy, Libya and Benghazi, and the army will be victorious, God willing.
The two warring parties have resumed ceasefire talks. Haftar's side has threatened to resume military operations if the rival GNA administration does not commit to a ceasefire. Chamrono, CGTN.
Meanwhile, the Libyan National Oil Corporation has condemned Turkey's recent announcement of oil exploration plans in Libya's waters. An agreement between Turkey and the Libyan Government of National Accord has redefined the Mediterranean water borders, creating joint borders between Turkey and Libya. The move has been opposed by the EU and countries including Greece, Cyprus, and Egypt. Here is CGTN's Adel Al-Mahroui with the details.
Turkey says it could start oil explorations in Libya's waters by October this year. Ankara received the green light from the UN-recognized Government of National Accord. Turkey has been supporting the GNA with fighters and arms against the eastern-based Libyan National Army.
The move is clearly drawing the reasons behind Turkey's support on the Government of National Accord. It is interested in Libya's oil riches. It also wants to expand influence in North Africa. In the peak of the Libyan fight and division, Turkey has become the only entity getting benefits from further oil explorations in the East Mediterranean.
All Sarraj's rivals from the Eastern Parliament and the LNA have condemned the move. It also sparked controversy about how revenues from these future explorations will be distributed among the rival Libyan factions.
The NOC manages oil companies whose main production comes from East Libya, but the Libyan National Army doesn't have the power to control the oil ports or even manage against Turkish ships in the Mediterranean to stop these exploration violations because it's heavily engaged in the civil war. There is also the issue of how the revenues of these possible new oil productions will be divided.
Turkey and the GNA have signed an agreement last year, drafting their own water borders in the Mediterranean Sea. Their deal disregards Greek and Cypriot water borders and challenges natural gas projects they've been planning with Egypt and Israel. This means that the planned explorations could be taking place in disputed economic zones in the East Mediterranean region.
Faiz Sarraj, the head of the Government of National Accord, is meeting President Recep Tayyip Erdogan this week. They will be discussing military and economic ties, of which will be issuing oil exploration licenses to Turkish oil companies. This is all happening while the fighting in Libya intensifies and the country sinks in its own blood. Adel Mahroui, CGTN, Cairo.
Let's head over to South Sudan now. The Deputy Interior Minister, Mabior Garang, has resigned, citing lack of progress in the country's implementation of the 2018 peace deal. Garang belongs to an opposition group led by the current First Vice President, Riek Machar. CGTN's Patrick Oyet reports.
Mabior Garang is a son to the late John Garang, the South Sudan revolutionary leader and founder of the current ruling party. He says he quit because of insecurity in the country and lack of political will to implement the peace agreement. In a resignation letter addressed to his leader, Dr. Riek Machar, Mabior accuses President Kiir of having no intention to implement the peace agreement. The peace deal dictates that major towns and civilian centers be demilitarized, civilians be disarmed, and all former rival forces be united, but that has only partly been done. The resignation to many is a sign of frustration following the slow progress in the implementation of the September 2018 peace deal. Mabior was appointed in March together with other ministers in a new unity government. However, formation of the new government is not yet complete. The peace parties are yet to agree on the allocation of states, and the parliament is yet to be instituted. Patrick Oyet, CGTN, Juba, South Sudan.
Elsewhere, a major protest is expected in the U.S. Capitol as rallies over the police killing of George Floyd enters a 12th day. Floyd died on May the 25th in Minneapolis after an officer pinned him to the ground with a knee to the neck for nearly 9 minutes. His death has sparked days of protests against racism and police brutality across the United States, with solidarity rallies taking place around the world. Meanwhile, the mayor of Washington, D.C. has named a section of the street leading to the White House Black Lives Matter Plaza. A 2-block-long mural has also been painted onto the streets. And in solidarity, the thousands of protesters in the United Kingdom have ignored an official warning to avoid demonstrating during the coronavirus outbreak. Anti-racism riots have been taking place following the death of George Floyd. Authorities say the gatherings are unlawful and pose a high infection risk. Throngs of people gathered at London's Parliament Square, with the majority wearing face masks and others protective gear. But social distancing was not maintained during the rally. The UK is still under a partial lockdown and mass gatherings are banned. Interior Minister Priti Patel says she understands the public's desire to protest, but said it is safer to stay away.
Of course, we do not want to see violence. We do not want to see the protests get out of hand, and the police are very conscious of that. They will always do the right thing. As I've said, they will engage, they will encourage. Enforcement is the last resort. But also, I would say to the organisers of any events that are taking place across London, but also across the country, because it's not just London, there are many other planned events across the UK, that the organisers speak to the police, engage with officers, so that they can help to keep the public safe.
Well, the Ghanaian government has been holding a memorial service in honor of George Floyd. A traditional ceremony was organized by the U.S. diaspora community and the country's tourism authority. During the memorial, people called for justice for George Floyd and an end to racism. Floyd's name has been added to a wall of fallen heroes of African descent at the W.E.B. Du Bois Memorial Center for Pan-African Culture in Accra.
We have to defend ourselves. We can no longer tolerate people killing us without fighting back. We have to fight back.
We just need the system to do what it already is supposed to be doing, to acknowledge that when people are being brutalized by the police, that the police should be held accountable. And when I say accountable, not just even fired from their jobs, but that they are criminally charged.
Indeed, we are one, united in spirit, united on a common agenda to fight injustice around the world. And we are also saying that it's our time that they escape to Africa. Africa is ready to receive our own.
George Floyd is not the first person to be brutalized and killed by the police in America, but he is the one that was murdered that caused the entire world to come together against racism and against brutality in America. So this has been a very important thing to me and fellow diasporans that live in Ghana and from around the world.
And a group of activists have staged a protest march to the American Embassy in South Africa's capital, Pretoria. The Not in My Name movement was started by a small group of South Africans to tackle gender violence, but has since started dealing with other society issues, including racism. CGTN's Yulisa Njamela has the details.
The death of a U.S. citizen, George Floyd, at the hands of the police has not only sparked widespread protests in the United States, but in other countries as well. Here in South Africa, it has even inspired the governing African National Congress and its alliance partners to launch an anti-racism campaign. All that in support of the Black Lives Matter movement. The campaign includes a call for all South Africans to wear black every Friday for at least the next 3 weeks to show solidarity in the fight against racism. Ordinary South African citizens and civil organizations have also declared their support to the Black Lives Matter movement. A large number of Not in My Name protesters gathered here at the United States Embassy in Pretoria in support of the protests currently ongoing in the U.S. The march also calls to an end to recurring racism here in South Africa and an end to police and security force brutality.
The significance of us coming to the embassy is to stand in solidarity with the international community and identify with the Black Lives Matter movement. Should we not receive justice for our people, we will proceed with intensifying our mass mobilization on the ground and make sure that we'll come back stronger.
South Africa's government also released a statement earlier this week calling on all in America, especially security forces, to exercise maximum restraint in responding to the anger and frustration felt by many of its citizens. Yulisa Njamela for CGTN in Pretoria, South Africa.
Time now for a quick break, but here's what's still ahead on the program. The World Health Organization now recommends wearing of masks to combat the spread of COVID-19. And an African establishment develops a homegrown teleconferencing solution.
You're watching breaking news on CGTN.
Welcome to the world today on CGTN.
Welcome back to Africa Live. Thanks for staying with us. The World Health Organization has updated its guidance on the use of masks to control the spread of COVID-19. In light of evolving evidence, the World Health Body is advising that government should encourage the general public to wear medical or fabric masks where there is widespread transmission and where physical distancing is difficult. CGTN's Tuli Shabalala has more on that. Let's take a listen.
Over the past several months, the world has been scrambling to curb the spread of the coronavirus. Countries locking down their borders and airspace. Governments urging people to isolate, wear protective masks, and exercise physical distancing. Prompted by evidence from studies conducted in recent weeks, the World Health Organization has updated its guidance on the wearing of masks to reduce the risk of viral transmission.
In areas with community transmission, we advise that people aged 60 years or over, or those with underlying conditions, should wear a medical mask in situations where physical distancing is not possible. In light of evolving evidence, WHO advises that governments should encourage the general public to wear masks where there is widespread transmission and physical distancing is difficult.
WHO says medical masks should be worn in areas that include public transport, in shops, or other confined and crowded environments. The organization has also released new guidelines on the composition of fabric masks, but has urged the public to continue using hygiene measures to prevent transmission.
Masks are not a replacement for physical distancing, hand hygiene, and other public health measures. Masks are only of benefit as part of a comprehensive approach in the fight against COVID-19.
The announcement comes a day after the UK government announced that it would be making face coverings mandatory on public transport, following months of claims that science was not clear on their effectiveness. Tuli Shabalala, CGTN.
A Chinese-built makeshift hospital in Sao Tome and Principe is helping ease the African country's medical pressure. The hospital was designed by Chinese experts and built under the support of the World Health Organization. It started operation after more than 1 month's construction. It currently has 50 beds and can be expanded to 100 beds. The only designated hospital for COVID-19 in the country has reported 25 infected medical workers. China's fourth batch medical team to the country shared its experience with local medical workers. With the donation from the Chinese embassy to the country, the fourth batch Chinese medical team has also helped transform a local school to a second makeshift hospital for COVID-19 patients, which has a capacity of 70 beds.
I think that it's very helpful for African countries can have this opportunity to work with Chinese team, Chinese government to help us to improve and to make strong our health system. And I think that it's very good.
The Chinese medical team had taken an active role in building the hospital in the past month. COVID-19 patients will be gathered here for isolation and treatment. The Chinese medical team will work with people here to fight the pandemic together.
The COVID-19 pandemic has impacted how we live, learn, and work. Many around the world are still under some form of stay-at-home order. Usiku Games, a mobile game studio in Kenya, has created the first ever teleconferencing system in Africa to support those studying or working from home. CGTN's Nick Mudima tells us more.
In the heart of Kenya's capital city, Nairobi, we meet Jay Shapiro, the founder of Usiku Games, who has boldly taken Zoom and Skype head-on by creating Gumzo, which means chatting in Swahili, the first ever teleconferencing system in Africa.
When COVID hit, we realized that people are suffering through anxiety, loneliness, separation. And so for the first time, people across Africa are turning to video conferencing, using tools like Zoom, WebEx, Skype, that sort of thing. We realized that there's some really fundamental problems with those tools. And so we decided to create a better one.
For Gumzo, all you need is a phone number which is validated through SMS. This means that every person who was on the Gumzo communication platform has a validated phone number to avoid problems like Zoom bombing.
With us, in order to come into a room, you have to knock to get into the room. The host can see your live video face, your name, your phone number, and can decide whether or not to let you in.
Gumzo's founders also had the education sector in mind when they created the platform. The system can take an unlimited number of users and has a user-friendly interface. The service is free for users and costs $1 per week for those who want to host their own meetings, with 50% of the proceeds going to the COVID-19 kitty.
We can support hundreds of users within our platform, but we've also built in the ability to do YouTube live streaming. So you could have a small room with just your 50 favorite friends or VIPs, have a chat with them, and then have an audience of thousands or millions on YouTube.
For other users who shifted from Zoom and Skype, the latest innovation is also a recipe of belief and hope.
The quality of video and the quality of sound is very, very good. This is because I'm made to understand that the server sits in Kenya and they also sit in SA. And the company is also planning to have more servers around Africa. So that makes it very easy in terms of low latency when it comes to quality of sound and the quality of video. This is African solution, and we've beaten people with other solutions before.
But as much as the system offers a user-friendly platform to its customers, there's also the aspect of celebrating good as a societal bigger picture during this COVID-19 pandemic.
There's literally hundreds of millions of dollars leaving the continent to go to platforms like Zoom at a time when we need that money here in the local economies. And so by creating a local platform, the money stays in Africa and helps to facilitate regenerative growth and creating jobs.
It is the first video conferencing system made in Africa. I know you're used to Zoom, you're used to Skype, but Gumzo has come with a wake of relief. Remember, the servers are right here in Kenya, meaning you're assured of quality, you're assured of consistency, and of course the latency is also something to actually admire. Nick Mudimba, CGTN, Nairobi, Kenya.
In Ethiopia, Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed has officially launched a push for the planting of, listen to this, 5 billion new trees during this year's rainy season. At a ceremony in the southern city of Hawassa, he told citizens he wanted the country to plant 20 billion trees over the next 4 years. The Prime Minister's Green Legacy campaign aims to promote ecotourism and transform Ethiopia.
This year, coronavirus came as a challenge, especially for planting in groups. But while coronavirus could challenge us, it won't stop us from achieving our desires and growth. I call on politicians to plant trees by suspending your political views for a while and engaging your followers.
And we're not done just yet. We've got your sports news coming up after the break. Here's a look at the headline. In sports, FIFA's relief plan to help global football cushion against the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic almost completes.
How would you create your legend? On the fields, on the tracks, in the arenas of Africa. Were you born to be a player? Could this moment be yours? Sports Scene. Find your game.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back to Sport on Africa Live. We start with football, where FIFA President Gianni Infantino has announced that a financial relief plan is in its final stages. The plan aims to cushion the sport from the effects of the coronavirus pandemic. Infantino stressed that financial help would be made available to all levels of the game, not just the top clubs.
The need for top club football to resume has understandably taken priority. But we must also consider national teams, women's football, lower tier domestic leagues, youth and the grassroots game. We have to show unity across all aspects of football and make sure football can resume in its globality. This is our priority, and our financial relief plan will also follow this principle.
Well, let's cross over to Germany, where the Bundesliga champions Bayern Munich has moved closer to defending their title with a 4-2 victory over Bayer Leverkusen. The hosts shocked the visitors just 9 minutes into the game through Lucas Alario's goal after being ruled onside by the VAR. In the 27th minute, Kingsley Coman scored for Bayern to level matters. A second goal for the visitors from Leon Goretzka made it 2-1 before Serge Gnabry extended the lead to 3-1 just before the break. After halftime, Robert Lewandowski headed in his 30th goal of the season, following a superb assist from Thomas Muller. In the 89th minute, Florian Wirtz scored a second for the home side, but it only flavored the score as Bayern ran out. 4-2 winners. The champions have restored their 10-point lead over second-place Dortmund, who have a game in hand. Well, Brazil's Amanda Nunes, the women's featherweight and bantamweight title holder, and Canada's Felicia Spencer both made weight on Friday ahead of their featherweight title fight at the main event of UFC 2050 this weekend. Both fighters weighed in with masks on. Nunes at 65.7 kilograms and Spencer at 65.5 kgs. Nunes has a chance to become the first multi-weight class title holder to successfully defend both belts. Spencer, who has a record of 8 wins and 1 loss, is Canada's first title challenger since Georges St. Pierre in 2017. Nunes has been bantamweight champion since July 2016, making her the longest reigning current title holder in the UFC. She pulled off a stunning upset when she knocked out the formidable Chris Cyborg in under a minute to win the title in 2018. Well, that's it for this edition of Africa Live. Remember, you can send us your feedback to the contacts on the screen and follow us on digital media platforms. For the team, I'm Richard Nta saying thank you so much for watching, and we will be right back here same time tomorrow. Till then, take care.
This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
May 25th marked another dark day in America's history of race relations and police